The moment my boss lifted the microphone at the New York branch anniversary, I knew something was wrong. My name is Clara Whitmore. I tell you now, because names matter when credit doesn't. I had led this branch through a collapse everyone else ran from. I stood among executives and staff, hands clasped, waiting for the kind of acknowledgement that usually comes after you pull a team back from the edge. My boss smiled the way he always did when he thought he was being generous. Tonight isn't just about celebrating survival, he said. It's about announcing the future. I felt a few people glance my way. Someone behind me whispered, "This is it." I nodded without turning around. "The board and I agree," he continued, "that the New York branch needs fresh leadership for the next chapter." He didn't say my name. Instead, he gestured to the young man standing beside me. The intern, the one who reported to me, the one I had trained, corrected, and defended when he missed deadlines. Polite applause broke out, confused at first. Then louder. I leaned toward him and said quietly, "This has to be a mistake." He didn't look surprised. He looked pleased. "Relax," he said, lowering his voice. "It's already decided." I swallowed. "You're an intern." He tilted his head, a small smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. "You didn't know then, just loud enough for me to hear." He added, "He's my dad." The room erupted into applause again, this time confident. Cameras flashed. My boss avoided my eyes. I forced my face into a smile that felt like it might crack my teeth. I clapped when everyone else did. I nodded as if this made sense. When the applause finally died down, my boss said, "Clara will support the transition." I stood, not quickly, not dramatically. I walked past him, past the intern, past the stage where they had just handed over the branch I rebuilt. I didn't lose the New York branch that night. I lost something more dangerous to hold on to the belief that loyalty and results would ever be enough. The story you're about to hear is a fictional narrative crafted by the writing team at Her Revenge. While inspired by real workplace dynamics, this story is not meant to glorify retaliation, but to explore dignity, boundaries, and the quiet strength it takes to walk away without losing yourself. I stepped outside into the noise of the city, my phone buzzing with messages I didn't read. By morning, everyone would want explanations. For now, I needed silence and time to remember exactly how this branch had survived when no one else believed it would. The New York branch had already been written off long before the anniversary night. I remember the conference call when it happened. My boss's voice came through flat and careful. "We're evaluating consolidation options," he said. "Manhattan is expensive. Performance hasn't justified the footprint." One by one, names disappeared from the meeting. Transfers approved, resignations accepted. People who had once sworn loyalty suddenly found better opportunities elsewhere. "You should put in for a transfer," one director told me afterward. "Chicago is stable. San Francisco is hiring. I'm staying," I said. There was a pause, then a quiet laugh. "Clara, don't be stubborn. This branch is bleeding." "I know," I replied. "That's why someone has to stay." The next week, I was sitting across from two executives who barely remembered my name. One of them flipped through a thin folder and said, "Client churn is unacceptable. Morale is worse." "Why shouldn't we shut this down? Because the clients didn't leave?" I said, "They're waiting for what the other asked, for someone to stop treating this place like it's already dead." Silence stretched across the table. Then my boss spoke. "What's your plan? I'll rebuild operations," I said. "Not presentations, not slogans, actual processes. I'll talk to every major client myself. I'll keep the team we have left focused instead of scared." "And if it fails," he asked, "then you can close it knowing someone tried." They didn't applaud, they didn't encourage me, but they didn't shut us down. The months that followed were relentless. Clients yelled, staff cried in conference rooms. I stayed late to fix problems no one wanted to own. When someone quit, I absorbed their work. When a client threatened to walk, I answered the phone myself. One night, a senior account manager stopped by my office and said, "I don't know why you're doing this. I'm not doing it for a title." I said, "I'm doing it because if we give up now, none of this ever mattered." He nodded and sat back down at his desk. That was how the branch survived. Not because anyone believed in it, but because I refused to leave when believing stopped being convenient. The growth didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments, paid for in hours no one tracked, and sacrifices no one asked about. "You're still here, my assistant," Maya said one night, poking her head into my office well past dinner. It's almost 10. I know, I said, eyes still on the screen. Send the revised projections to the client. I'll review them before morning. She hesitated. You've been doing that every night this week. So has the problem, I replied. Weekends disappeared. Calls came during family birthdays, during funerals, during moments I told myself I would make up later. When a client threatened to pull their account, I took the call myself. If this branch goes under, we go with it. One client snapped over the phone. It won't, I said evenly. Not on my watch. Inside the office, tension ran high. People were exhausted, scared, angry. We're doing the work of 2 teams. A project lead told me after a long meeting. No one upstairs even notices. They will, I said. Keep going. When the numbers finally turned, they turned hard. Revenue climbed, retention stabilized. Expansion plans came back onto the table. At a leadership call, my boss sounded impressed for the first time in years. 300% growth, he said. That's not easy to explain to the board. It wasn't easy to build either, I said. He laughed lightly. You've proven yourself that, Clara. Just keep doing what you're doing. The future will take care of itself. Those words stayed with me, not because they were clear, but because they sounded like a promise without anything attached to it. At a quarterly review, a junior manager whispered, You know they can't ignore you now. I nodded. Though something in my chest tightened. I had learned not to celebrate early. I didn't chase recognition. I chased stability. I wanted the branch to stand without constant fear. I believed that results, sustained and undeniable, would eventually earn protection. I didn't yet understand how easily dedication can be mistaken for something that no longer needs to be defended. His name was Ethan Hale, and his resume arrived with more polish than substance. I'm assigning him to you, my boss said over the phone. He needs exposure to real leadership. I glanced at the document on my desk. Prestigious university, short internships, no long-term projects. He's still in school, I said. This is a high-pressure quarter. That's why he'll learn fast, my boss replied. Take care of him. Ethan showed up the next morning early and confident. Clara, right, he said, extending his hand. I've heard a lot about you. From who, I asked. He smiled. People who matter. I walked him through the basics, assigned him routine tasks, corrected his mistakes without embarrassing him. When he missed a deadline, I stayed late to help him fix it. Don't worry, I told him once. Everyone's overwhelmed their first month. He leaned back in his chair. I'm not worried. That confidence would have been harmless if it hadn't been reinforced from above. When Ethan spoke in meetings, my boss listened. When I questioned a suggestion, my boss deflected. Let's hear him out, he said more than once. After a planning session, I pulled Ethan aside. You skipped 3 steps in that proposal. It won't hold. He shrugged. That's how things used to be done. I stiffened. This branch survived because we don't skip steps. He met my gaze, unbothered. Things change. The first time I felt the shift was subtle. An email copied to the wrong people. A meeting I wasn't invited to. When I asked my boss about it, he smiled. You're reading too much into it. Clara? He's just eager. One afternoon, as we walked out together, Ethan said casually, You built something impressive here. Thank you, I said. For now, he added. I stopped walking. What does that mean? He smiled again. The same calm smile. It means timing matters. He left before I could respond. I stood there longer than I meant to, realizing that mentorship only works when both people believe they're playing the same game. I didn't resign the next morning. That seemed to surprise everyone. Instead, my boss called me into his office and spoke like we were negotiating something reasonable. We'll need you during the transition, he said. You know the clients. You know the systems. I know the work, I replied. He nodded, relieved. Good. Let's keep this professional. Professional. It turned out, meant sitting in meetings where my chair was still there. But my voice no longer mattered. Ethan spoke first now. He used phrases I had taught him, delivered with confidence that hadn't existed weeks earlier. When I tried to correct him, my boss cut in. Let's not slow things down, he said. We can refine later. Later never came. After one meeting, Maya caught up to me in the hallway. They didn't even look at you, she said quietly. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, because that was easier than explaining the anger sitting just beneath my ribs. Another manager, Tom, stopped by my office that afternoon. He closed the door before speaking. People are confused, he said. They don't know who they report to anymore. They know, I said. They just don't want to say it out loud. He hesitated. Are you staying for now? That answer seemed to spread. People came by one at a time, never in groups. They spoke softly, like the walls were listening. He changed the process. One said. He canceled the client review. Another whispered. He told us not to run things by you anymore. I listened. I took notes. I stopped correcting. When Ethan passed my office, he paused. You're being very cooperative, he said. I'm being quiet, I replied. He smiled. Same thing. It wasn't. Silence can be restraint. Silence can be observation. Silence can be preparation. By the end of the week, I stopped staying late. I stopped jumping in to fix problems that weren't handed to me. I did exactly what was asked and nothing more. The branch kept moving. I began to pull back, not in anger, but with intention. I wasn't disappearing. I was letting the truth surface on its own. No one ever asked me what actually made the branch work. They assumed growth lived in dashboards and reports. They assumed momentum could be handed off with a title. The first call came from Daniel Reyes, a client I had worked with since the worst months. I was told Ethan is my new point of contact, he said. Is that temporary? It's the new structure, I replied. There was a pause. Then I'd like you on the call anyway. I won't be, I said. But I trust you'll make the right decision. He exhaled slowly. That's what worries me, inside the branch. Systems began to fray. Ethan shortened onboarding without consulting the team. We're wasting time, he said in a meeting. People need to move faster. Maya spoke up. Those steps prevent errors. Ethan waved her off. We'll deal with issues if they come up. They came up. A senior developer pulled me aside near the elevators. He cut the review cycle. She said, we flagged it. Did he listen? I asked. She shook her head. He said you over-engineered everything. I nodded. Then follow his direction. Word spread quickly. Managers I had trained stopped coming to me for answers. Not because they didn't trust me, but because they were told not to. One afternoon, my boss stopped by my office. You're being very hands-off, he said. You asked me to support the transition, I replied. I'm letting him lead. He studied me for a moment. Clients are asking for you. They're adjusting, I said. Ethan passed behind him and added, they'll get used to it. The mistake came quietly. A client renewal stalled because a detail Ethan dismissed turned into a breach of confidence. We didn't think it mattered, he said during the follow-up. It mattered, the client replied. That's why we trusted Clara. I said nothing. By the end of the month, the numbers flattened, not collapsed, flattened. Enough to notice, not enough to panic. The key to growth had never been something I could take with me. It had always been something they stopped listening to. Ethan's first official directive came in an all-hands meeting. We're streamlining, he said, standing where I used to stand. Too many approvals slow us down. A manager raised a hand. Those approvals protect client delivery, Ethan smiled. We can't be afraid of progress. I watched from my seat as heads turned, unsure who still had authority. When someone glanced at me, I kept my eyes down. By the end of the week, the first resignation landed. It was Tom, one of the most steady operations leads we had. I didn't plan to leave, he told me quietly in my office. But I'm being asked to sign off on decisions I don't agree with. You don't have to explain, I said. He hesitated. You should know it's not personal. It's structural. I know, I replied. Then Maya came in, eyes red but voice steady. He told me my process notes were outdated. They aren't, I said. I know, she said. That's the problem. Clients noticed before leadership did. My phone started ringing again. Numbers I recognized immediately. Clara, this rollout doesn't look like you, Daniel said during one call. Is something wrong? I'm not involved anymore. I told him. Silence followed. Then, that explains a lot. I declined every invitation to step in. Not out of spite, but because stepping in would only delay what was already happening. My boss called me late one evening. His tone had changed. Walk me through the client pipeline, he said. That's Ethan's responsibility now, I replied. I just want your perspective. You had it, I said. You chose differently. Another pause. Longer this time. People are leaving. They warned you, I said. At the next leadership meeting, Ethan spoke faster, louder. Numbers were explained away, concerns reframed as resistance. We can't cling to old habits, he said. No one argued. No one nodded either. Confidence filled the room. Competence quietly packed its things and left. The call came late, after most of the office lights would have been off if I were still there. "Clara," my boss said, without preamble. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered. "We need to talk." "I'm listening," I said. There was a pause, the kind that means someone is choosing words carefully. "Things aren't going as expected." "That happens," I replied. "We've lost momentum," he said. "Clients are uneasy. The team is unsettled." "You reorganized," I said. "That comes with consequences." He cleared his throat. "I'd like you to come back, temporarily, just to stabilize things." "Under what authority?" I asked. Another pause. "We can figure that out." "That's what you said at the anniversary," I said. "Right before you handed the branch to your son." His voice tightened. "This isn't about that." "It is," I said. "You made it about that." He shifted tactics. "Name your terms." "I'm not negotiating," I said. "I'm explaining." Silence stretched between us. "I spent years building something you treated like it could be passed around," I continued. "You didn't ask me to lead. You asked me to clean up. We trusted you," he said quickly. "You trusted me when it was convenient," I replied, "and ignored me when it wasn't." A breath came through the line. "Ethan is learning. Learning is expensive," I said. "This branch can't afford tuition." His tone sharpened. "So you're just going to let it fail?" "I'm going to let it be honest," I said. "I won't erase what happened so you can pretend it didn't." The line went quiet. When he spoke again, the authority was gone. "If you don't help, this could get worse." "I already helped," I said. "That was the part you replaced." I ended the call before he could respond. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. Some boundaries aren't acts of revenge. They're acts of self-respect. The notice came from corporate headquarters, not from my boss. "Clara Whitmore," the email read. "We are conducting a formal review of the New York branch. Your participation is requested as a witness." They didn't call it an investigation, not at first. The meeting was scheduled with two people I hadn't met before. One introduced herself as Karen Doyle, from compliance. The other, Mark Ellison, represented corporate governance. They spoke plainly, without small talk. "We're here to understand how leadership decisions were made," Karen said, "and what impact they had." Mark leaned forward. "You were responsible for the branch's turnaround. I was responsible for its operations," I said. "Leadership decisions were not mine." "Let's start there," he said. They asked about the anniversary announcement. I explained the timeline, the lack of consultation, the sudden change in authority. Karen nodded slowly. "Was the reporting structure formally updated?" "No," I said. "Responsibilities shifted before documentation did," Mark asked. "Were you instructed to remain during the transition?" "Yes." "And were you given decision-making power during that period?" "No." The questions moved deeper. Client relationships, process changes, staff departures. "Were any concerns raised internally?" Karen asked. "Yes," I said, repeatedly, by whom I named names. Not dramatically, not defensively, just accurately. When they asked about Ethan, I didn't speculate. He was inexperienced, I said. He was placed in a role without the support or authority structure required to succeed. Karen exchanged a look with Mark. "And his relationship to your boss? He is his son," I said. That was the first thing written down without hesitation. Weeks passed. Meetings multiplied. Documents were requested. People were interviewed. The branch grew quieter. One afternoon, Karen called me directly. "Thank you for your cooperation," she said. "Your account clarified several inconsistencies." "What happens next?" I asked. "There will be findings," she said, "and consequences." They arrived quietly. A leadership change announced internally. A reassignment framed as voluntary. Policies rewritten with careful language. No one apologized to me. They didn't need to. The silence had finally shifted. And it was no longer protecting the people it once did. The update came through an internal memo, written in the kind of language companies use when they want something to disappear quietly. My former boss was stepping away from his leadership role to pursue other opportunities. His son was transitioning out of the New York branch to continue his development elsewhere. No names were highlighted, no explanations offered, just a clean reset, as if the last year had been a clerical error. Maya called me the same afternoon. "It's official," she said. "They cleared out the top floor. Are people okay?" I asked. "They're relieved," she said, confused, but relieved. A week later, my boss requested a meeting. I agreed, but only on my terms. We sat across from each other, no assistants, no agenda. They wanted me to ask if you'd consider coming back, he said. His voice lacked the authority it once carried. Things could be different. I held his gaze. Different how he hesitated. More respect, clearer authority. That was always available, I said. You just didn't choose it. He nodded once, accepting what he couldn't undo. You were right, he said quietly. I know, I replied. Not with pride, with finality. I didn't return to the branch, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to prove anything there anymore. I moved forward carrying what mattered: my work, my reputation, my sense of self intact. Later, Daniel sent a short message. Wherever you lead next, we'll follow. I closed the email and smiled for the first time in months. The truth had done its work without my help. No speeches, no revenge, just consequences aligning with reality. Power taken without integrity never lasts. And respect that depends on your silence was never respect at all. Walking away with your dignity is not a loss. It is the only ending that leaves you whole.